Comics and Cinema Club. My name is Matt.
I'm Drew.
In honor of season 2 coming out this week, Drew and I decided to look over the pilot episode of 2023's most talked about show, Velma. You know, in many ways, the work of a critic is easy. We risk very little, yet enjoy a position over those who offer up their work and themselves to our judgment. We thrive on negative criticism, which is fun to write and to listen to. But the bitter truth that all critics must inevitably face is that in the grand scheme of things, the average piece of junk is probably more meaningful than our criticism designating it so. But none of this is because this show sucks.
Yeah, HBO Max basically asked a question, hey, how the fuck do you screw up Scooby-Doo? And this was the answer.
And we mean it, folks. This is a real stinker. Like, I honestly thought that everybody was exaggerating when this show first came out about how terrible it is, how hokey the writing is, and how it makes everyone look awful in this. But everyone was pretty accurate. We couldn't even get past the first 2 minutes without saying, oh, fuck off, or just wanting to blow our brains out.
Yeah, basically the whole way through this show just was not good. And we don't condone or we don't support hate watching. And we don't do it with this show. It's why we only watched the first episode. Because we watched the first episode and we knew it was going to be a bad one. It was, but it was like after we watched the Snyder Cut. The Snyder Cut, we were like, oh, we weren't expecting it to be that good. And it was that good. But then this, we went in with very low expectations, and those expectations were matched very easily and even exceeded as low expectations go, because it just did not work. And what Matt said is 100% true with the hokey writing and the jokes and the characterization and everything. It just nothing worked.
Genuinely speaking here, no character sounds like a normal human being. None of them talk in a way that ordinary people talk to each other with. Everybody is all explaining tropes or meta humor this, and it's like, I swear, this kind of meta humor makes Rick and Morty look subtle. Not even Family Guy explains the joke this much. It's like, shut up. You know? It's like, come on, just talk like a human being.
Yeah. Um, from like the moment the show starts, it just went downhill. And the reason, for that is literally just because, like Matt said, every single joke would be explained. And that's where like comedy, in my opinion, is its weakest. You don't need to explain every single joke. It's funny when you don't explain every single joke, when you let the audience figure it out. Because there would be so many jokes in that show that were like, oh, what are we, some cringy CW teen drama? And it's like, yeah, you guys are. You could have literally just said, what are we, Riverdale? And it would have been funnier than what you just said.
Honest to God, it's just like Joker said. Except if you had to explain it to me. If you had to explain it to me, there is no joke.
Yeah.
It's literally the words of the Clown Prince of Pride. This kind of humor is awful. I don't know who this show is for, because it is very clearly not made for adults who still watch cartoons, because it makes fun of adults who still watch his cartoons. And it's like, I genuinely cannot picture the audience that they had in mind when they were making this crap.
Yeah. Here's the thing. The great thing about Scooby-Doo is that Scooby-Doo is for all ages. Doesn't matter if you're a kid. Doesn't matter if you're an adult. If you just want to sit down and watch your favorite little dog run around with the kids and solve mysteries, that's all you need. It's Scooby-Doo for a reason. The problem with Velma is that Velma basically was like, hey, let's take Scooby-Doo out of the equation here. Let's just, and that's fine. If you want to take Scooby-Doo out of the equation, sure, take Scooby-Doo out of the equation. It's going to be an uphill battle, all the way through, which is the problem with the show. But instead of just focusing on Velma, Shaggy, Fred, and Daphne, and actually developing them as characters, the show decided, nah, we're just going to tear all of them down because they decided to make Fred into a douchebag, Daphne into a douchebag, Velma into a douchebag, and Shaggy into somebody who is not a pot dealer when everybody knows canonically Shaggy is a pot dealer. That's how the gang makes their money. But they just did not do a good job with handling their characters, even for like a pilot, because we get it. You have a whole season to develop their characters. But even in a pilot, like it just felt so wrong the way that they were being treated and handled.
Any time that could be spent trying to flesh out the characters is instead spent on just expositing what happened to them as opposed to going into the emotions of it, or more tasteless, unfunny meta humor. And it's like, it's just so infuriating to get to that point. But I will say one positive is that it does make me very, very confident in my writing skills because I know I can write human beings better than this crap.
Yeah, here's the thing with comedy, and this is what this show does not get, and what some people don't get. Comedy needs emotion, and it needs the emotion to balance it out. If you are just doing joke after joke after joke after joke, and those jokes are not hitting, those jokes are not landing, you're going to lose interest in the audience. But at the same time, if you don't have anything emotional, you're also going to lose the audience. And I'm not just saying like, oh, the world has to be ending for the stakes to be high or for like there to be emotion. Example is Abbott Elementary, which is a half-hour comedy show, kind of different than Velma, but I just thought of it because that show has a lot of comedy in it. The pilot episode is all about comedy. It's about the comedic aspects of this elementary school in Philly and the teachers struggling to get by. And then there's one scene that I remember where literally like you see why they're doing what they're doing, and it's a very good, very emotional scene that doesn't get undercut by a joke or anything. It's just there. And with Velma, like they didn't like the whole thing was like, oh, Velma's mom, she went missing and we don't know where she is, and maybe she did. And then they're like, oh, actually, she ran away, Velma, because she hated you and because you were the problem for her running away because you were a terrible child and you led to her eye getting popped out or something like that too. It just emotionally speaking, it was not good. And from a comedic perspective too, it was not good. And it mixed with all the jokes being so like the fucking joke I hated the most was the Shaggy joke where he's just sitting in the car. Oh, I'm sorry, Norville, where he's sitting in the car and he just says, something about drugs, which I do not do. And he just sits there in silence, blinking at the screen like, hey guys, that was funny, right? That was really funny. You laughing? You laughing? Why are you guys not laughing? So
It's really, honestly, really a shame that the James Gunn movie was able to handle a drug joke with Shaggy better than this one. Because, honest to God, the drug joke in that movie was actually funny.
yeah,
And here's the thing about humor we understand humor is very subjective. We understand that what works for some people isn't going to work for everyone, and with that, it's fine. But if at a certain point, especially the cringe humor like this is trying, there needs to be a certain human connection. Take, for instance, one of my all time favorite comedies, It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. That show is engrossed in bad characters, bad taste, and cringe humor, and yet it works because we can enjoy and relate to these characters on a somewhat level because and we understand exactly what this type of show is trying to do. These characters are not treated like they're the good people that they think they are, as opposed to Velma, who seems to be unable to tell that this character is awful. It's like this person is definitely not Velma. She is judgmental, uptight, persnickety, and it's just, and above all else, she won't stop with the meta commentary. Shut up, lady.
yeah.
And it's like, oh, you made your mother disappear. Instead of the genuine emotional response that it's getting from that, all I can think of is, oh, boo hoo, let me play a sad song for you on the world's smallest violin.
And he actually does have the world's smallest violin for people
Really?
wondering. That wasn't a soundboard or anything. He actually has one.
See?
Yeah. Yeah.
again, when you lose that genuine sense of human connection, you lose a lot of the humor because without it, it's just nothing. There's generally just attempts that fall flat, as opposed to It's Always Sunny, which has some of the same people, honestly. Like Glenn Howerton is the voice of Fred in the show, and he's Dennis in It's Always Sunny. Why is it that he's so much funnier there as opposed to here, where he's just nothing?
Yeah.
Absolutely nothing.
Yeah, it just that's the problem. The animation was also weird because it just felt like I don't know, it felt like it was trying to be Rick and Morty, but it just didn't work. It felt kind of weird and a little too like this is gonna sound funny, but it felt too cartoonish, if that makes sense.
And keep in mind, Scooby-Doo is one of the cartoons, so when you cross that line of going too cartoony, that's a problem.
Yeah.
And I noticed it was a lot, kind of like Mystery Incorporated, its animation, and we'll get to that show in just a
Yeah.
second. But it felt like it was trying to do that or to take elements from it because this place is also set in Crystal Cove, which is why are you here? Why are you trying to drag that show into the mud? It's like you do not deserve to lick the freaking ball sweat off of Fred's underwear in that show. Why are you doing this? You know?
Yeah. Yeah. The other thing too about Velma is just that you didn't have Scooby-Doo. That was probably the biggest thing that they could have had. And we get it. It's an origin story. But it still just felt like there was so much more they could have done with the show. Because Velma is genuinely a good character. Like, not in the show, but in general, she's a good character. She's interesting. She's fun. She has the personality and the possibility to be the star of her own show. But the way that they interpreted her here, they made her like weird and gross and I'm not just saying. I mean, literally, she like eats French fries out of a trash can for no reason. Like, there's no reason for her to do that. Like, and they're just like, haha, guys, it's funny, and it just doesn't work. And the same can be said, like I said, for all the other characters. And it just is. It's why do you do this? Why do you do this to Scooby Doo? So
They've even attempted to have Velma as the main lead in another project starring her and Daphne, just simply titled Velma and Daphne. And while that movie may not be the most beloved among Scooby Doo fans, it is still better than this, as it treats the characters with a sense of reverence and respect that is just missing here. And not to mention, Fred is also terrible, but and he doesn't even make sense. He says in the pilot that he's a late bloomer, that he hasn't hit puberty. Dude, you are 5'7". Your voice is that of a man. You hit puberty already. You just don't have hair. Grow up and deal with it. And it's
yeah,
like, I genuinely don't get it. It's like, where's all of this disrespect for Fred coming from? It's like, what did Fred do to deserve this?
the main reasoning that they give for Fred is that like, oh, he's a rich guy, and we got to make fun of him because he's a rich guy, and it's like that's not how Fred is. Fred is a good character because he's a rich guy, and beyond that, like, sure, his family's rich, so what? He's Fred. He's literally a himbo. Why are you taking away the himbo aspect of him and making him into this douchebag? It just doesn't work.
And
And
why is this set in high school? These
yeah,
characters could be like 16 or 15 almost, and they're showing them like totally
oh
nude in a
yeah,
shower. It's like, what? Gross,
I completely
gross,
forgot about that. Yeah, the
gross.
whole opening sequence is literally just showing like these girls showering, and it makes like a big point of like, oh guys, gratuitous nudity. That's so not original or anything, and then it shows gratuitous nudity that's covered up by bubbles, and it's like, you guys are not funny. I don't know what you're trying to do here.
And two cockroaches fucking like
Yeah,
literally.
I forgot about that. That was just bizarre. I was like, why do you have that? Why do you have two cockroaches having sex? Like, what? Although it might have been a metaphor for the show. Yeah. The other thing too, we didn't even make it past the first episode. We watched the first episode, we called it. But we know of the Velma and Daphne kiss. And we know of that scene.
Mm-hmm.
And that is also a scene that just like makes me cringe because let me put it in perspective. Velma came out in 2023 in January. In December 2022, Puss in Boots 2: The Last Wish came out. Now, Puss in Boots 2 is one of my I really enjoy it as an animated movie. It's a very good movie in general. The animation's great. The character's great. I did not expect for Puss in Boots 2 to be as good as it was. And one of that reasoning for it is the story, is that it literally was like, hey, you know that silly cat guy? Let's put him through an existential crisis that tackles the concept of mortality and living with just one life, and what will you do with that one life. There's a scene where Puss like literally has a panic attack in the middle of these woods, and his little buddy Perito, a dog, walks up to him, and instead of like doing something goofy like hey snap out of it, like smacking him or something, he just sits down next to him and put his head on his lap. And it's just a beautiful depiction of a panic attack. Because if you have a panic attack, you can't, and I've never had one, but you can't do anything from what I've heard and from what I looked up. The best thing you can do is just be there for that person. And that was beautiful. Meanwhile, Velma has this whole thing where it basically is like having Velma have like heart attacks, basically, when like, or like panic. They're not defined as being panic attacks, but they're basically are, where she has like hallucinations and stuff. And then she's like freaking out. And basically, she gets broken out of it two ways. The first way is Norval tells Shaggy, tells her that he loves her, and she thinks he's joking. And she says, haha, keep telling me those silly jokes. And he keeps like actually telling her that he likes her. And she keeps like laughing. And it's like, that's really dumb. And then the second way in the second episode is Velma kisses Daphne, or Daphne kisses Velma, and it breaks her out the panic attack, which we're not against Daphne and Velma kissing because everybody knows Velma, she's like that.
She swings both ways.
Yeah,
absolutely.
we're all for that. But the biggest thing is like that's not how panic attacks work at all. You would probably make it worse if you kissed. So
yeah, that's not what you should do, because just being there, holding them, comforting them, that is so much more impactful than just Frenching out of nowhere.
Yeah.
It's like
we're telling a joke, yeah.
Inside and Out. Listen. I truly don't like to judge people by their appearances because I'm not much to look at. So who am I to judge something like that? But truly, from the bottom of my heart, Inside and Out, Velma is nothing more than a big, fat, gross, unpleasant loser. That is who she is in this show. I genuinely, like, at a certain point, she was having a heart attack. She was dying, and she was basically saying, just let me go. I'm weird. No one likes me. And it was like, yeah, that's true. Go ahead and die. Like, nobody fucking cares anymore. So, once again, I'm going to take advantage of it as much as I can because it's...
You really should. You do a great job with it, honestly. You should learn how to play it, for real.
It's just it's built in. You press a little button in the back here.
I got you. The other thing, too, is that there were some moments where it was like, hey, guys, remember we're a Scooby-Doo show? And it had, like, these tiny little cameos and Easter eggs of, like, the creep mask, like, on the shelf. And then it had, like, the Scooby-Doo classic eyes and posters of, like, some of the monsters. And I was like, no. Get that out of here. You don't deserve to have those Easter eggs in there. But, yeah, that was basically, because we could keep going. It's already been, like, 15 minutes. But basically, that's what we thought of the Velma show. Now, after we watched the first episode, I made the suggestion, hey, let's watch something else. And we turned around and we watched What's New Scooby-Doo.
Yep.
And we decided a little before the two, we didn't just want this to be about us like saying how bad Velma is, because it is bad. But we also wanted to just say how much we love Scooby-Doo and how great Scooby-Doo is. So basically, we're watching What's New Scooby-Doo. We watched like 2 episodes, and it is the most simple, easy, enjoyable little thing you can watch, because literally it's 21 minutes. When they drop information, it doesn't feel expository. It doesn't feel in your face. The jokes actually land. The voice acting's good. Each character feels like they have a say. They don't just feel like they're there for reasons or like, oh, we just exist. It feels like Daphne has something she has to add to the plot. Shaggy and Scooby have something to add to the plot. Fred has something to add to the plot. Velma has something to add to the plot. I actually actively felt like it was progressing things forward for a silly, goofy show about dogs and kids solving mysteries. And then, of course, the music slaps. And you
Mhm.
cannot tell me that theme song is not one of the greatest theme songs of all time.
Nobody would argue that it isn't.
Yeah.
And honest to God, just hearing all of those voices back together, Casey Kasem, Frank Welcome, Mindy Cohn, Greta Lyle, all of them just talking and working off of each other, that in turn elicits so much more of a response than a single anything, than the entirety of Velma's pilot. And again, we don't want to spend this entire episode just bashing
Yeah.
on Velma. That's beating a dead horse. And honest to God, we do like to be more positive on this show,
Mhm.
but we want to emphasize the show's bad. Don't hate watch it, because that's giving it
Yeah.
the exact attention that it wants. And that's what's going to get it season 3 and onward. And we just don't want that anymore.
If you're looking for something to watch, Matt and I do have Scooby-Doo recommendations, and there are much like here's the thing: we're grown men, we're adults, but Scooby-Doo is still like a nice warm bowl of soup. It's like chicken noodle soup for the soul. Anybody can watch it, and anybody can enjoy it because it's fucking Scooby-Doo. Like, you don't need to make it so super mature that only adults can watch it. Scooby Doo is meant to be for everybody because literally the story is just, hey, let's have these young adults, the teenage kids, go walk around and solve mysteries with their talking dog. Like, that's all you have. That's all you need. And you don't need to explain the talking dog either. There's a couple different examples. And I mean, what's new Scooby Doo for me? I grew up with that shit. What's new Scooby Doo to me was like my childhood, and I loved that. I had so many of the DVDs when I was growing up, and there were so many episodes in that that just hit. And again, the music. What's this Scooby Doo coming after you? Like it was just you. The moment you heard that, it was like snaps is firing on all fronts and everything. So yeah, I mean that was my shit when I was a kid. And then also, if you want an example of making Scooby Doo mature but also keeping Scooby Doo, Scooby Natural, the supernatural Scooby Doo crossover episode that should not have worked.
And yeah,
That
it
should,
does.
yeah, yeah, it does. Because they literally were like, hey, Scooby Doo's goofy. Scooby Doo's weird. We love that. We're going to address that it's weird and that it's goofy. They literally got Matthew Lillard in on that shit, which is crazy. I mean, they couldn't even get him for the Velma show.
They
But
can
it's
get
just,
anyone for the Velma show. They literally got the actual Scooby cast. They got
yeah.
uh uh who voice who voices Velma now, because Mindy Cohn stopped a while back, and that
Okay.
she was replaced by the actress for Webby and DuckTales. I forget her name, but I'm sorry. But they actually got Frank Welker, Matthew Lillard, Greta Lyle. They got everybody because they made it very clear they respect and love this franchise. Like, the characters grew up with it. It's what kept them going and what it helped inspire them in a lot of ways. So
Yeah.
that in and of itself is just a great suggestion.
Yeah, and it's just in general a funny episode too because they make a lot of references to Scooby Doo. They have the classic chase, they have the music, the opening's fun, and the funny thing too is like you even see like a little Scrappy Doo show up at some point, which is like it's Scrappy Doo, but it still works. To answer your question, I don't know who currently voices Velma. I think for that one it was who you said, Kate Misusi, I think her name is.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's a Kate Mikuchi. That's right.
Nikuchi, my bad. Yeah. That's who she was in that. I don't know if she voiced Velma in anything. Oh, she did
Nope.
voice Velma in some other specials too, actually. Oh,
Oh yeah, she's been Velma's voice actress for
oh
a
okay.
long
Yeah, yeah,
time now.
my bad. Yeah, okay. But yeah, again, it's like it's so easy to do Scooby Doo. Like how do you screw that up? How do you mess up Scooby Doo? So that's something I'd recommend Scooby Natural and What's New Scooby Doo. And then of course, and I'm not trying to steal anything from you, Matt. I'll let you if
Don't
you
worry
want to
about it.
cut in, you
Don't
can
worry
cut.
about it.
You know you can cut in. Um, the movies. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
not just talking about the James Gunn. I'm talking about like direct to DVD movies, like Scooby Doo and the Monster from Mexico, Scooby Doo and the Loch Ness Monster. That was my shit growing up. Scooby Doo on Zombie Island was by
Mm-hmm.
far one of their best ones because Scooby Doo on Zombie Island literally said, "Hey, we've been having these guys be, pretty silly, pretty goofy. Let's just, throw them into an actual real life horror situation where they actually have to fight monsters and they're real. It is so casually and so like mature with it that it just worked. So
Not to mention, it can introduce one of my favorite songs to listen whenever Halloween rolls around, Terror Time Again.
yeah,
Because it's terror time again.
yeah.
I just can't help it. It's an amazing song.
Yeah. Like again, Scooby-Doo's music slaps. Like, and part of that is because of the Hex Girls, if you know what I'm saying.
Yes,
But
to go into one of my
yeah,
recommendations, check out the Witch's Curse. Is that what it's
I
called?
think it is. Let me look it up. But yeah, you because
It was
I've talked
based
long enough, so
to some of his ideas. Scooby-Doo has been around since 1969. So quite frankly, every generation at this point has grown up with something about involving Scooby-Doo in some way, which is why it's so impactful to us as adults. We're grown men and we're raving about it still, as if we're still in its target audience. What do you think?
well, no, I just remembered. I completely forgot to mention Scooby-Doo and the Cyber Chase. That was
Yes,
another direct-to-DVD movie that was just great because it also like it acknowledged the old Scooby-Doos and everything. Like it brought back like the old style characters and everything, which was really cool. I'm still looking. Sorry.
okay, but yes, not to mention Scooby themselves and the whole gang aren't even the only memorable characters that come from those movies, as mentioned earlier. The Hex Girls, amazing characters. For some people, they feel like their voices were heard with these characters since they're sort of witches' ghosts. That's right, the movie.
Yeah, that's what they're in.
That was their first appearance, and their music is wonderful. They're basically like ego goth girls, and they're very much Wiccan. They have their very own practices, and they're just amazing. Like I freaking love the Hex Girls. Like I could burst into any one of their songs, and it's just awesome.
I also think the Hex Girls was everybody's first crush, whoever you are, because
Everybody's
they're
first
just
mouth crush, at
yeah,
least.
goth crush. Yeah, that's fair. Because yeah, but like again, it's simple, it's easy, it's great. That's all you need, and you don't need to complicate it.
And if you
And
really want something that's incredibly mature, like a full series that's really mature, I would recommend to use Scooby Doo Mystery Incorporated. That was the show I watched. Um, like religiously growing up. We got so many fun shows on Cartoon Network during that time. Mystery Incorporated was one of them, and it took all of these silly characters, Talking Dog included, and was able to put them in like a serious story. It was able to give them deep emotional arcs. It was able to introduce lore that we never thought we'd actually get, like going into all of their parents and all of that, and not to mention giving us probably the best Scooby Doo villain, or at least my personal favorite, Professor Pericles, who, if you know this show, you know not to mess around with that damn bird. Its brain is no bigger than a walnut, yet it's smarter than every human possibly who has ever lived. And by and large, he's my favorite Scooby Doo villain. And he's just a fucking bird. And that's what really makes it fun for me.
yeah,
So if you want Scooby that's serious and even has some continuously good humor, that's definitely what I recommend for everybody listening.
yeah. I mean, there are examples of Scooby Doo that can be mature, but also keep the goofiness. And Mystery Incorporated is one of those shows for sure. And then it's just like again, you have examples of how Scooby Doo can be good and how Scooby Doo can be great. And we could go on and on and on and just talk about it. But at the end of the day, it's Scooby Doo. You know, yeah, it's like Matt said. It's been with every kid, every adult, everybody for as long as you know. Whether you grew up with like what's new Scooby Doo, Scooby Doo, Where Are You, Mystery Incorporated, any of that stuff. It's Scooby Doo.
It's that simple. It's been with us since the 60s, and it's probably going to be with us for a long, long time. So if you don't like it, buckle in. We got years of history, and it's only continuing.
Oh yeah, yeah,
And
definitely.
it's really hard to explain why, because we had so many shows around the same time that sort of fizzled out into obscurity, like I don't know, Jabberjaw or whoever the caveman was, but it's just something about Scooby Doo that is just really, really impactful, that just really sticks with us. And I can't explain why, but I don't really need to either, because quite frankly, we're just enjoying it. We're just along for the ride, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean that's all it is. That's all you can do with Scooby-Doo. You can just sit back and enjoy the ride. And again, it just felt like with Velma you couldn't really have that. But with all the other stuff we just mentioned, Scooby-Doo and the Cyber Chase, What's New Scooby-Doo, Scooby-Doo Where Are You, Scooby Natural, Scooby Mystery Incorporated, Zombie Island, even when it was getting like scary and mature, you could still enjoy it and still have the goofiness. Because my favorite part about what's Scooby-Doo is those chases. You know, you have the
Mm-hmm.
chase scenes, and you have these terrifying monsters chasing them, and then the monsters do like the most human things imaginable. Like, you know, they're pretending to be in disguise and they give like a ghost a hot dog and the ghost is like, "Oh, I'll have some mustard, please." And then they spray the ghost with like mustard and blast it away. It's like that's Scooby-Doo. So,
You don't need to explain anything. The episode we watched had a Union and Confederate soldier be around, and we know if this was in Velma, they would just be making commentary about the friggin' Union and Confederacy,
yeah.
and we don't need to know that. We didn't really need it, you know. Like
Yeah.
they didn't do it in What's New Scooby Doo because they knew it wasn't needed for that kind of humor. They just let the situation play out, you know. And it's like, well, honestly, what more commentary do you need beyond Union good, Confederacy bad,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, I mean, they also like they didn't like you said, Matt, they didn't over explain it, but they also were just like they didn't even really mention that they were Union Confederate. You could just tell because they were wearing blue and gray uniforms. But they were like, okay, these are two brothers who are on two different sides of the Civil War. That's all you need to know. That's it.
And what else? Oh yeah, even when Scooby was bad, like during that era was He Who Must Not Be Named. Uh, I'm just kidding, Scrappy. I know generations hate Scrappy, and I find him annoying too. But he's not on my like top 10 worst characters ever list. So I I, I could just call him Scrappy. It's funny too because Mystery Incorporated did a couple of gags featuring some of their old villains, and because they're like hung up in a mystery museum or whatever, and at one point, Fred and Daphne are there on a date, and Daphne just sees Scrappy, and Fred's just like, "Look away, Daphne. We all promised each other that we would never speak of him, not ever." And that a lot is all we needed. But even during that period with Scrappy, it wasn't even like the worst in the world. It was just not as Scooby Doo as it could be. But
Yeah,
we can still identify it as somewhat Scooby Doo, but with Velma, we can't really say that. This is just an attempt at that really did not work.
it really did not. And because it's getting a second season, it just really feels like they could have done so much more with it. And it's possible. I mean, I don't know. I've been seeing some people say the second season's an improvement, but we're probably never going to watch it because it sounds like they're still doing a lot of the same stuff too. I could be dead wrong, but that just is what it sounds like. And I think it got renewed for a second season before the show even came out.
Hmm.
Um, I could be wrong there, but that's just what I heard. But it definitely is just kind of like it didn't need a second season. It only got a second season because oh wait, no, it came out after. It said Velma season 2. I have an article here February 13th. So that would have been after. And I think that was because people hate watch it. So don't hate watch the season.
No, 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 no.
Don't
You want
hate
to
watch it.
emphasize if you want to watch it, pirate it. But
Yeah.
let's just not give this the attention it deserves. That it so
Yeah.
desperately craves, you know?
Mhm. Yeah. It just let the show peter out and end. We don't need to let it grow and expand any more than it already has. And it's just this kind of like if it does get a third season, then God help us all. But hopefully, maybe this can be the last season of the show, and hopefully, more people can go watch the older stuff and enjoy that more because that's much, much better.
Yes. So, in summation, don't hate watch Velma. Don't give it the time of day. Just understand exactly what it is. It's a bad
Yeah.
show. and we just kind of wanted it to die.
Yeah.
So huge thumbs down from me.
Yeah, big 2 thumbs down from me, honestly. But 2 thumbs up for Scooby-Doo in general because it's
Yes.
Scooby-Doo. So,
Yes. And just to make sure I don't violate the rule of 3, one,
oh yeah,
sorry.
here's something else I just realized too. Scooby-Doo and well, Velma, apparently there's a project that someone's working on that's called Special Covert Operation Brain Initiative,
Mm-hmm.
which stands for Scooby,
Scooby.
which is like, that's how you're gonna use Scooby? That's how you're gonna
And
use Scooby-Doo,
the
really?
actual
So,
fucking joke is uh, Velma just says Scooby. But what did Scooby do?
oh my God.
Yeah, that's the actual joke. I saw that in a fucking YouTube
I,
video.
I didn't see
Only
that.
before it dropped, there was a teaser that showed Norville, because this says ain't Shaggy. This guy ain't Shaggy. Shaggy. That this is just Norville. It just showed Norville sharing a milkshake with some girl. People were theorizing that that girl was actually supposed to be this version of Scooby, like
Yeah.
personified and made human, which thank God it wasn't,
Yeah, that
because
would have been bad.
that's just cringe. Like even more cringe than the show already is. But
Mhm.
it's just that's not him. Scooby is just resorted to a quick gag.
Yeah.
Like, what did Scooby do? That is literally it. And
Mhm.
I don't know if I'm grateful for that or if I'm disappointed at that, but either way, I don't like it. No, sir, I don't like it one bit.
They just don't do a good job with the show. And we can keep saying that over and over, but it's the honest truth.
Yeah, it's a dead horse. We're just continuing to beat it. So, uh, yeah, in summation, bad show. Don't watch. Watch something else for
Yeah,
your own sake.
definitely go watch something else. But I think that at that point, because we keep beating the dead horse and shooting it with a shotgun, is going to do it for our little talk today. But thank you guys for joining us, and hopefully next time we'll have something not as cringy to talk about.
See you guys. Thank you for joining us.
Yep. See ya. Bye. What's this Scooby-Doo?
Coming after you. Gonna solve the mystery.